Hello, darlings. My name is Novice Ann Namana do from the Order of Perpetual Indulgence, Glasgow, and I want to talk to you about some of the things happening about the Gender Recognition Act and how to debunk some of the things that are being said by certain politicians about trans rights. So let's start this wonderfully gorgeous subject for now. When we're discussing about the reform to the Gender Recognition Act, we are talking about reforms to the age limit that it can be given to from 18 to 16, because on the back of feedback from trans teens, a lot of them wish they could have done it at 16, because the one thing that you get to know about being yourself is yourself, because you are discovering constantly who you are and your relation to the world. Now, obviously, there should be a measured response, because childhood is difficult and everyone has a different go in it and there are lots of different circumstances. So that should be taken into account. But there are a number of 16-year-olds that do have the capacity to make that choice, to understand what their gender is, and should be able to access the medical help they need and also the recognition for their acquired gender, which is the legal definition within the Gender Recognition Act. So there's the other modification, which is to reduce the lived-in gender specification down from 2 years to 3 months. It's an arbitrary number that they picked out of feedback, which they said. This is the committee that were debating these changes. But also, what this means is that a trans person only has to live within 3 months of their acquired gender. Because as you can imagine, if I started tomorrow living in the gender that I want to, this is what I'm wearing close right now, is as close to my gender expression as I can be. But if I started living this tomorrow and started being myself, lots of people would have lots of different reactions, but it would require me to gather being this gender expression, or if I wanted to say I am woman, that I would be this for 3 months, or as it is now, 2 years. And that means that they would have to get evidence that I was doing this from friends, co-workers and family. This is incredibly horrible for trans people, because within these 3 groups, your employer may discriminate against you, your family may forsake you, and also your friends may betray you. So it really is agony, impersonal, invasive and harmful to trans people. And I dare say it's probably one of the highest reasons that trans people kill themselves. That and the fact society is geared to hate folk, as you will find out by reading any media outlet. This is why we observe Trans Day of Remembrance, and will be doing so on Sunday in Glasgow City Centre. Because there is a lot of hate for, frankly, no good reason. There's a massive perception that trans people have some sort of secret agenda other than just being themselves. It does not make sense that this happens. Because if you wanted to do certain things, one of the arguments of TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, will use is that trans people are trying to break into single-sex spaces rather than the fact they want to be in them because they identify with that sex. If you are a man wanting to abuse a woman, you do not need to dress as one to do it. You gain no advantage by doing it. And because of the amount of crime that happened against women anyway, these minutiae little things will not impact that. And I hope in time, when this goes down, when this change to the Gender Recognition Act is given, that you will simply see, like many other countries that already operate a system like this currently, that there is no spike in crime. There are no reports of anything, because all the evidence of where this could go wrong that they could get in the 2 consultations over the number of years that it's taken to get this through, no one has come forward to volunteer those. And it's funny for a lot of people talking as if trans people are monsters, for nobody to wade in and say, I have evidence this has happened, that trans people have broken into a single safe space and hurt people. It's funny, the lack of evidence that comes with those kind of assertions, because people are convinced that this group, this delicate group of people who have looked inside of themselves and made the decision to destroy the status quo that they know, because when you transition from one gender to another, you leave a shit ton of safety. You lose potentially your partner, you lose potentially your family, your friends, or your job. So I don't understand how you can equate calling these people monsters when they turn their lives inside out so that they can actually be the way that gives them joy, the way that gives them love, the way that they can look in a mirror and not feel total disgust at what they see because they are not the gender that they know themselves to be. That is a hell. And for anyone to say that, oh, it's just a ruse, really? Really? Who would do that? What sane individual would do that? The other interesting things about the Gender Recognition Act are as follows, that the only thing that the Gender Recognition Certificate, the JRC, that trans people are after does is make sure that your gender is recorded accurately as the gender you are at the time for when you marry. So that's 1. Number 2 is that when you die, you are recorded as the gender you have lived in. That's it for marriage and for death. Does it mean that trans people could go into sport? No, it doesn't affect that at all. Does it affect trans people's access to same-sex spaces? No, it doesn't affect that at all. Also, these things already happen where trans people go into sport and trans people go into single-sex spaces because it is up to, according to the Equality Act, the choice of the venue. The choice of the venue gets to decide what kind of limitations it puts on. Hey, if you want simply cisgendered people in your space, fine, do it. You will be branded transphobic. I will not give you money, and I would encourage others not to either as well. Because you have to realise that everyone is equally shafted by patriarchy. And if we all stand together, maybe we can change the status quo. Maybe we can knock a few billionaires out of the running and maybe have female billionaires, trans and non-binary billionaires. Maybe make the power balance that we see so much in society a little bit more of an even keel by all working together to remedy it so that everybody gets an equal say at the table. Trans rights do not infringe on your rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans people want what gay people wanted 30 years ago and now have. General acceptance, equal marriage. We are talking about some of the most vulnerable people in society. People who, if are not allowed to be themselves, cannot exist, as we see with so many names on TDOR and so many charities aimed at supporting trans people. So for the love of God, if you have any questions, ask them, research them, listen to actual research, not the opinions of celebrities that are invested with their own little ideas of what are happening. People who are the victim of men, not victims of the trans community. Read a book, read up on it, find out from people who are trans. rather than people who are cis talking about communities they do not have experience with, that they have not held in their arms, that they have not marched with, that they have not been on prides with, that they have not talked to passionately or been in love with. Listen to trans people about trans issues and then make your mind up. You are adored. Blessed be you, and see you at Tidor.